The morning was heavy with the scent of pine and gasoline, the kind of air that clung to your skin and reminded you of things you'd rather forget. Irene stood at the edge of her front yard, arms crossed, watching the crew in orange vests hack at the trees that lined her street. The chainsaws screamed, drowning out the birds, and each falling branch felt like a small betrayal. These trees were why she and her husband, Tom, had bought the house a promise of shade, of permanence, of something that would outlast them. Now, the city was tearing them down, citing blight, bureaucracy, and budget cuts. "Jim, they're out there cutting the trees down," she muttered to herself, though Tom was already halfway to the car, wrestling their son, Christopher, into his booster seat. Christopher was kicking the dashboard, his sneakers leaving smudges on the glove box. "Damn it, Christopher! Stop it!" Irene snapped, her voice sharper than she meant. She caught Tom's glance, half exasperation, half resignation, and felt the familiar knot tighten in her chest. "I said stop it!" she repeated, louder this time, stepping toward the car. "We need to see a permit. Show me a permit!" She wasn't sure if she was yelling at Christopher or the crew, but the words spilled out, raw and desperate. Nobody answered. The chainsaws kept buzzing, and Christopher kept kicking. And Tom just shook his head and said, "Irene, let's go. He's got school." School! The word felt like a tether, pulling her back to the routine she both clung to and resented. Christopher didn't want to go, ever did. "Not going to school today," he whined, his small face crumpling. Irene knelt beside the car door, her knees pressing into the gravel. "Honey, everybody goes to school. You have to go too." "Not going," he shouted, and she felt the fight drain out of her. Tom stepped in, his voice firm but gentle. "Come on, big guy, we're out of here." Christopher's protests grew louder. "I want mommy. I want you to take me." And Irene leaned in, brushing her lips against his forehead. "I can't today, honey. I've got an appointment. Tomorrow, okay? I'll take you tomorrow." She stood back as Tom shut the door, the car pulling away with Christopher's tear-streaked face pressed against the window. "Bye-bye, honey," she whispered, her hand raised in a wave he probably didn't see. The street felt quieter now. The chainsaws paused, but the ache in her chest only grew. Later that morning, she found herself back at the trees, staring at the stumps like they were graves. That's when she saw him, Billy, the tree trimmer, leaning against his truck, a cigarette dangling from his lips. He wasn't like the others. There was something restless about him, something that made her uneasy and curious all at once. She'd seen him before, trimming branches in the neighborhood, always watching her a little too long when she walked by with groceries or waved Christopher off to school. "You're cutting them down," she said, her voice accusatory. Billy flicked ash onto the ground and shrugged. "Not cutting, trimming. City's orders. If I was cutting, I'd start at the bottom, not the top." She bristled, unsure if he was mocking her. "I fought for these trees. Got a petition, took it to city council. They're not supposed to be touched." He looked at her then, really looked, and she felt exposed, like he could see the cracks she tried so hard to hide. "I'm not the enemy, Irene," he said, her name sounding strange on his tongue. "Just doing my job. But I'm sorry if it upset you." The apology caught her off guard, softening something inside her. She nodded, muttered a quick, "Okay," and turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Hey, I got something for you." He reached into his truck and pulled out a small jar, filled with what looked like tiny eggs. "Moth larvae. Put them under the bark. They hatch, eat the bugs, saves the trees, no chemicals." She took the jar, her fingers brushing his, and felt a jolt she didn't want to name. "Thanks," she said, and walked away, the jar heavy in her hand. That night, the house was too quiet. Tom and Christopher were gone camping, fishing, some father-son thing Irene had encouraged, but now regretted. She poured a glass of wine, then another, and found herself thinking about Billy. Not just the jar, but the way he'd looked at her, like she was more than a wife, a mother, a woman fighting losing battles with City Hall. She didn't like how it made her feel like she was standing on the edge of something dangerous. The phone rang, startling her. It was Tom, his voice crackling through the line. "Irene, it's raining. Chris might be getting sick, so we're coming home tonight. Just wanted you to know." "Tonight?" she asked, her heart sinking. She wasn't ready for them to come back, not yet. "Okay, drive safe." She hung up and stared at the jar on the counter. Before she could think better of it, she grabbed her keys and drove to Billy's trailer, parked at the edge of town. She told herself she just wanted to thank him, to ask about the larvae. But the truth was murkier. The trailer door was unlocked, and she stepped inside, calling his name. No answer. She wandered further in, the air thick with the smell of cigarette smoke and motor oil, and then the door slammed shut behind her. Panic surged through her. She yanked at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. "Hello? Is anyone there?" Her voice echoed in the empty space. She pounded on the door, her breaths coming faster, until finally, she heard footsteps outside. The door swung open, and there was Billy, his expression shifting from surprise to something else, amusement maybe, or curiosity. "What the hell are you doing in my trailer?" he asked, leaning against the frame. "It jammed," she stammered. "I came to thank you for the moths." And then the door. "Jammed, huh?" He stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. "Funny, it never sticks for me." She felt heat creep up her neck. "I just need a ride into town. I need to get home." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, but not till tonight. Got a party to hit first. Chinese New Year or some shit. You're welcome to wait." She didn't want to wait. Didn't want to be here at all. But what choice did she have? She followed him to a clearing by the lake, where a small group was gathered, music blaring, beer cans scattered, a fire crackling under the stars. That's where she met Grace, a woman with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue, who seemed to know Billy too well. Grace handed her a drink, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "You're Irene, huh? Billy's told me about you." Irene's stomach twisted. "What'd he say?" Grace laughed, low and knowing. "Enough." The night blurred into a haze of music and smoke, and Irene let herself get swept up in it, if only to drown out the noise in her head. Billy was there, always close, his presence both a comfort and a challenge. Grace watched them, her gaze heavy with something Irene couldn't. Name jealousy, maybe, or pity. At some point, Billy pulled her aside, his voice low. "You don't belong here, Irene. You know that. Then why'd you let me stay?" She shot back, the alcohol loosening her tongue. He didn't answer, just looked at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. "Come on," he said finally. "Let's get you home." The drive back was quiet, the road stretching out like a confession waiting to happen. Irene's phone buzzed another message from Tom. "We're almost home. Where are you?" She didn't reply, couldn't. Her mind was a tangle of guilt and longing, of everything she'd been running from and everything she couldn't escape. When they reached her street, Billy stopped the truck but didn't turn off the engine. "You're gonna walk in there and say, 'Hi, honey, did you catch any fish?'" he said, his tone half mocking, half serious. "You're gonna hug your kid, kiss your husband, and it's gonna be okay." She laughed, a brittle sound. "You don't know anything about my life." "I know you're scared," he said, and the truth of it hit her like a fist. "But you've got something good here, Irene. Don't throw it away for a guy like me." She wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she got out of the truck, her legs unsteady, and walked toward the house. The lights were on, Tom's car in the driveway. She took a deep breath, opened the door, and stepped inside. "Hi, honey," she said, her voice trembling. "Did you catch any fish?" Tom looked up from the couch, Christopher asleep in his arms. He smiled, tired, but warm. "No fish, but we're home." She nodded, tears pricking her eyes, and sank into the space beside them. The jar of moth larvae sat on the counter, a small promise of salvation for the trees, maybe, and for her too. In the weeks that followed, Irene threw herself into saving the trees. She spread the larvae under the bark, watched for signs of life, and felt a quiet pride when the first moths emerged. The city backed off, the petition holding strong, and the neighborhood felt whole again. But inside, something had shifted. She couldn't unsee the woman she'd been that night by the lake, the one who'd wanted to run, to break free, to be someone else. She didn't tell Tom about Billy, about the trailer, about Grace. Some truths were too heavy to share, but she held her family closer, kissed Christopher's forehead a little longer, and tried to believe Billy was right, that she'd made the right choice. The trees stood tall, their leaves whispering in the breeze, and Irene stood with them, rooted but restless, carrying the weight of what remained.